everybody. Welcome to the Hammer and Nail Show, episode 28. I am your host, Jack Hammer, and my co-host over here to the side of me is Jessie Naylor. How you doing, Jessie?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. Ready to be back on our regularly scheduled day. It's been about 3 weeks. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I know last week we went a little early, so it definitely has been an extended period since we've been able to get together. And the 49ers had a game on Sunday night, didn't go very well against the Colts there, losing 30-18 after. Hey, but the one positive thing about that game is the 49ers scored 12 points in the first half, so you've got to be happy about that. That's the most points they've scored in a half in the first half since opening week of the season, so that's a big positive. But other than that, the 49ers continually seem to just shoot themselves in the foot, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. And they can't keep it together for a full game. They have not had a complete game on offense the whole season.
No, they haven't. The closest I would say, I mean, maybe against the Lions there,
Yeah,
they moved but yeah, no, you're right. For the most part, they really haven't. And the Lions game was week 1, so that doesn't really count anyway. That was so long ago. I don't even remember what that game was about. But I want to say hi to everybody over in the side over there. We've got Luke and Pinor and Corey over here saying what's up. And I think Pinor must be talking about Jessie because I don't think I'm his sunshine.
I don't know either.
But let's just get into it. I mean, the 49ers definitely have some offensive issues. And I think both of us have a similar take on where it starts. Is it an issue of execution or an issue of play calling?
Yeah. Okay, so to me it's both, right? Like if I have to put it on one, just based off of what we've seen the last couple of weeks, I'll probably lean towards execution, but it all trickles back up to the same guy. You know what I mean? So we could say, all right, well, it's play calling, and we know that's obvious, like that's on Shanahan. But like the excuses are, well, he's calling the plays and they're just not executing. But it's not like one player is not executing. It's, well, you've got this offensive lineman holding on this drive or this play. You've got this receiver not getting out of his breaks properly. You got the quarterback missing him. You've got a penalty here, a missed run fit here. It's all over the board, and all of that funnels right back up to the play caller, who also happens to be more than that. He's the head coach. Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, I'm willing to say, hey, they've got an execution issue. Maybe that's bigger than the actual play calling, but it all rolls uphill.
Oh, definitely, and I hear that all the time. It's always when the 49ers offense has issues, it's always play calling is the excuse that's given. It's a play calling issue an execution issue, not a play calling issue.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, that's what you hear, and I would agree with that. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of execution issues. That's why you're seeing so many penalties. The 49ers are one of the most penalized teams in the league. This year, they lead the league in penalty yards per game. So when you look at that, yes, they're having execution issues, they're having penalty issues, and those types of things. Yes, it's a player issue, and it's a coaching issue. And even if you don't want to say it's a coaching issue, it still all rolls back up to Kyle Shanahan because he has a big hand in everything and bringing all these players onto the team. So it's really either a coaching issue or it's a talent issue. That's where it comes down to. At least that's the way that I look at it, because all the usually if you're a good team, you don't have a lot of penalties and that kind of thing. So I definitely think the 49ers either have a talent issue or a coaching issue, and either way, it all rolls back up to Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if Shanahan was just an offensive coordinator, right, and you have a team struggling the way that they are to score points, and this team was expected to be a playoff contender or a Super Bowl contender, and they're 6 to 8 weeks into the season, like usually in that scenario, you see crazy things happen, like the offensive coordinator becomes the scapegoat, right? Even though there's an execution issue, it's not like they're going to fire the players. They would just say, oh, listen, we're not scoring points. We're not getting it done. We need to make some changes. So we're going to fire the offensive coordinator and we're going to promote so-and-so. But the difference is the offensive coordinator in this scenario is also the head coach. So, I mean, are you willing to part ways with your head coach midseason? That's usually not the best thing to do, right? Although I would
Mm-hmm.
fire them both immediately. I've been very clear about that. But yeah, I mean, I get why you wouldn't do that, right? So, but it ultimately goes to the person in charge more so than it does the people that are out there that are supposed to be executing.
Yeah, it does. It does, and there is a play calling issue, I think, as well. There's definitely an execution thing, but there's definitely some play calling things I think that you can point to as well. Um, you know, on the film breakdown that Grant and I did on Tuesday, we were really paying attention to the running game, for example, and the 49ers had a really good plan early on, and they got in the sense that they stopped running their counters. I think part of the reason they stopped doing that a little bit was because the linebacker stopped biting on it, and so they that was might have been part of it. But if you're ripping off 10 plus yards at a pop on those, and then you don't come back to them again, even in the second, you just don't come back to it after the first half. I think that's a play calling issue that you've gotten away from that. I think you go back to the Arizona game and the way that transpired with Trey Lance. I feel like that was a play calling issue. I didn't like that plan at all. And I know that the players left some of those plays out there, but for a rookie starting his first game, the way that they put that on him, and then the way that they were running him, I just didn't like I didn't like that plan at all. And so that game had a lot to do with play calling, I felt.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it is you're putting guys in a position that haven't proven that they can do whatever it is that you're requiring of them. And so you have an execution issue, but really the play call maybe put them in a bad position to start with. And I'll give you an example. Okay, so first of all, we know Jimmy really doesn't take many deep shots. That's one. Two, there was the play where I had pointed out where Jimmy had rolled right. He looked to Sanu to throw outside the numbers, and you said, well, he was the play was dialed up for Ayuk. Okay, that's fair, right? It was supposed to be a deep shot to Ayuk. Well, what did they do? George Kittle probably can make a block one-on-one with a defensive end to protect long enough for Garoppolo to climb up into the pocket and make that throw. They threw Dwelly out on the island, who's not the best blocker. We all know this. And they expected him to go one-on-one with the defensive end. On the surface, that looks like a good play call. Ayuk was open. If Jimmy was able to step up, maybe he hits that throw and it's a big gain or a touchdown, and people go, well, that's Dwelly's fault for not making the block. Well, it's like, well, you should kind of know that Dwelly's not going to hold a block for 2.5, 3 seconds one-on-one with the defensive end. To me, I think that's a play calling issue because you should know that your players, what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and call plays accordingly. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I disagree on that particular play. I agree with you in that you don't want to put Ross Dwelly one-on-one in pass protection necessarily with defensive end. But the reason I disagree with it on that particular play is that particular play with the way that was designed, if you look at all the linemen and what they're doing there, they're all moving like it's a zone to the left side. And Dwelly's job was really to take that defensive end and drive him down the line of scrimmage. So he wasn't really supposed to necessarily be in a set pass protection, which he ended up putting himself into. That one is an execution one in my opinion, because he needs to, the player doesn't drive the man down. He kind of just catches them. And then that kind of is what blows up the play, because Garoppolo's not even supposed to be worried about climbing the pocket. His whole job on that is to get outside of Dwelly, outside of all that. He's supposed to be, that's why they have him rolling so far to the right. But so that one for me isn't a play calling thing where my play calling, where I'm getting at the play calling is going away from your counters that are working, getting into shotgun as often as you do. Like, for example, the second drive. So they get the turnover, right? They just ran the ball 3 straight times for 14 plus yards. They get the ball back after a fumble. The first play, they go right back to what was just working for them, and they get 12 yards. Now they come back after that, and they go shotgun, a shotgun formation, and scurrying out to Deebo Samuel. On high level, surface level, that makes sense because you want to get the ball to Deebo Samuel. He's one of your playmakers. You want to get the ball in his hands early. But where it doesn't make sense is you've been dominating this team, and all of a sudden you take your quarterback and you put him in the shotgun, and even even if it's a run, it's not the same run concepts or anything that you've been doing that's been so successful. Instead, Kyle Shanahan needs to continue running those plays until they get stopped at that point, because at that point they had them on their heels because they hadn't had time to adjust yet. This goes back to your topic. You mentioned this last week. After Trey Lance's start about the 3 and outs and how it hurts the defense. Right? They'd been off the field for one play, a field goal in one play, or a kickoff in one play. So those guys weren't ready for it. That's why they got beat on the first down play. And then you basically take the pressure off of them with what you do. And that's frustrating. And then you kind of saw the 49ers do that a little bit here and there after throughout the rest of the second half. They never really got back to that game. So that's where
Shanahan does that a lot too, though, by the way, Jack, right? Like this is kind of the complaint in the Super Bowls. We saw it again last week. It's like he gives these teams a reprieve that they didn't earn. It's not like they forced you out of what was working. You just stopped doing it for whatever reason. It's almost as if he's anticipating that they're going to figure it out. And so he just stops going to it. And then when he comes back to it, it always ends up working again. So you're like, it's weird. The whole situation's weird.
Yeah. I just don't understand. I don't understand why you just don't keep, if you found something that's working, to just go away from it doesn't make sense to me. And that's what the 49ers did, because what happened was early on, like the touchdown run, for example, that's just a straight zone that the cutback lane gets wide open because the linebackers are overflowing with Juszczyk looking like he's running a route and Garoppolo looking like he's booting out, right? They started slowing down a little bit there, but that slowing down wasn't going to stop the counter portion of it. It was stopping the zone portion of that scheme that they're running there, but it really wasn't stopping the counter. And they did go back to it. So I would have liked to have. I should have been there yesterday to ask that question to Kyle Shanahan just to kind of get an idea. And maybe that's something we're going to see happen again this week against Chicago, and we can ask him that question then. But
yeah, absolutely. And that's the frustration, right? Like that's why I think. Well, I know that's where my frustration stems from, but I think that a lot of other 49er fans fall into this same category. It's different. Like if a play caller doesn't show an ability, or a player doesn't show an ability to go out and do XYZ really good, then you're just like, well, they're just not that good, right? But when somebody like Shanahan shows that he can go out and flat out call amazing games and keep teams on their heels for all 4 quarters, and even really do it throughout a whole season like you did in 2019, for it then not to happen for 2 years. And in year 2, we haven't seen it for a complete game. Like I'm not even asking for all season. Can I just see it for a game at this point? I've seen it in spurts. So it's more frustrating when somebody shows the potential that they can do something, but they just can't do it consistently. That's what's really, really frustrating to me as a fan.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I think I get that side of it, just going away from stuff that works and just certain things like that. It's just, that's a frustration. And you can see it sometimes, at the games that was, I was getting frustrated with it on Sunday night myself. But real quick, Barry Baller says, should have been Warner making that block instead of Dwelly. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's a fair thing. And then Raymond says, I hear what you're both saying. Both are valid. The team overall is in a funk. Seems like it could use a spark. Yeah, no, it definitely needs to use a spark, I think.
I wonder what he's alluding to. That's weird.
We'll probably get to that here in a minute, I think.
Sure.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention as far as Shanahan on the play calling and the execution piece? No, okay, that's good. Because I really think that it's something that, the Shanahan fanatics need to. Before we move on to the quarterback piece, have you noticed how quickly the Shanahan fans jumped off the bandwagon? It only took it only took 1 week of them all having to go sit out in the rain in order for them to be like, heck with it, I don't like this guy anymore.
Yeah, you know what, it is funny. It's funny how fast, but it's like they've jumped off, but they're still mad if you. It's like they've jumped off and they want to yell about it and be frustrated with it, But the moment you say they should be fired, people are like, well, hold on, let's not go that far yet. I mean, it's not all, you know what I mean? It's like, they still want to be on the bandwagon, but they haven't shown to stay on very strongly after one game in the rain.
Yeah, I'm not there on the firing portion, and the reason I say it is because of the Trey Lance piece. I don't think that's if this is happening next year, then yes, I'm with you, and that's what I'll be there.
But let me ask you a question real quick, because I really respect your opinion on this stuff, and this is kind of my thought process, and I'm curious to see if you agree or if you can set me straight on it. So my thought process is, I'll just ask you the question without telling you my thought process. Is it worse? Is it worse to fire Shanahan after this year, 1 year into Lance's career, right? Or is it worse to have 2 full years with this guy who's not at his A game and not maybe developing at his best before he gets fired? What would be worse?
I think that the plan was, to put these two together. And I just don't see Jed York wanting to fire him. As far as it being worse, it probably isn't going to be worse. I mean, it's 6-1, half a dozen of the other on that piece. It seems like everybody in the NFL is pretty much running the same concepts nowadays. There's, little wrinkles here and there in the run game, but pretty much everybody's doing the same stuff. So as far as that, I would prefer, it's a preference of mine that they hold off and wait and let it go one more year. And I think it's the way that the organization is looking at it too.
I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I want to be clear. Like, I don't think it's going to happen at all. Like, do I think it should happen? Sure. But it doesn't really matter what I think. The organization's not going to do what Jessie thinks. So that's not how this works.
Right. No, they're not going to do it. Either one of us says, but it is quite interesting how quickly certain things happened. The stuff with Lance or Shanahan, all that kind of stuff is stuff that's been discussed. I know on this show for the 28 episodes we've done. It's stuff that I talked about with Grant over on the All 49ers roundtables, and we had discussions about it all back and forth there. And all it took was one night of the crowd booing at halftime for pretty much every writer in the Bay Area to decide that it was time to start piling on Kyle Shanahan, and the narrative completely changes.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's jump over to another topic. Do the 49ers have a plan at quarterback? I know this is something that you and I have gone back and forth a little bit on, and it really, this whole thing started off, because of the book from Seth Wickersham, and people. I think what happened was one of the first reporters to put it out there, I think, was Matt Miller. I think that was one of the first guys that shot it out there for everybody to kind of see. Hey, look, and I think in his tweet he said something about the Patriots offering a first round pick or second round pick for Garoppolo, and the 49ers saying no, they want a first. I think that kind of set it off, because then before I responded right away, I just looked at the little snippet, and I could see that there wasn't an offer that was made. It took me reading it multiple times to get to the point to where I realized that I don't even think there was even a discussion of what. I don't even think they mentioned, hey, would you even be interested in taking a 2?
I don't think so either.
I don't, so it was quite interesting. And shortly after that, I saw a tweet from one of the guys over at 49er Goldmine, I think it is, and he was asking, what was the 49ers plan, and at what point was Trey Lance in that plan? And I think the 49ers plan was pretty straightforward from the very beginning. I think they laid it out there. I think they had multiple layers of it. I'll let you go first. Do you think they had a plan? I know we've gone back and forth a little bit on this.
Yeah, okay. Let's just play it out like we did on Twitter, because I think that's fair, right? And I think that's authentically where we're coming from. And I'm glad that we're able to talk about it, because maybe one of us will sway. Probably not, but maybe. So basically, you laid out the plan. or the perceived plan, from your standpoint. And basically, I just think what they had was a goal. Before you come up with a plan, you have goals in life, things that you want to achieve, right? Whether it's I want to live in a mansion, or I want a Lamborghini, or I want to retire by the time I'm 50, right? So let's go with the retirement one. I want to retire by the time I'm 50. That's the goal, right? So the 49ers have that goal. The goal is they want to get better at the quarterback position. Okay, fair. So how do you go about achieving that goal? That's where you set forth the plan. To me, they were all over the place. And it's because they had put themselves in this position where they had to do something this year, right? They hadn't drafted any quarterbacks other than CJ Beathard. They had already turned down the likes of Tom Brady, allegedly. And they took Garoppolo when the original plan, if you will, was to get Kirk Cousins. So they had already showed to abort mission once early. And then they had nothing in place all these years to replace Jimmy Garoppolo and get the quarterback that Kyle Shanahan actually wanted. So now they're in panic mode, which leads to the quote unquote plan this year, which was, well, we want a veteran quarterback. So they kicked the tires on Stafford. I don't think a lot ever really came of it, but they kicked the tires on Stafford. Okay, Stafford goes to the Rams. Then they kicked the tires on Watson. Well, Watson has his legal issues, and now we're out on that. They kicked the tires on a couple other guys as possible backup options or bridge quarterbacks, whatever, and none of it pans out. So then they say, well, we want one of these young guys. Well, we like 5 of them. Let's move up to 3. Okay, so you move up to 3 to guarantee you get one, but did you actually have a plan of who that guy was? Or I just need a quarterback, so we're going to move up to 3 and we'll figure it out later. Okay, so that's what they end up doing. They move up to 3. They take their guy, Lance, allegedly, and, here we are. So they were willing to shop Garoppolo for a first. That's what the reports were. Albert Breer said it. Peter King talked about it. Florio, a guy from NFL Network. So they were willing to deal Garoppolo if the price was right. Well, the price was never right. So now they keep Garoppolo, and this whole situation ends up playing out how it plays out. To me, that wasn't a plan. That was very scatterbrained. You had a goal, and you went after everything that was possibly in your way to try to figure something out, up to and including day before the draft day, however that worked out, inquiring about Aaron Rodgers, even though you were so set on Trey Lance. I just don't think that's a plan.
Yeah, I think the plan going in, or their goal was to upgrade the quarterback position. They said from day one that Jimmy Garoppolo was in their plans. And I don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo was really in their plans. I think that they had to say that at that point because they didn't have another quarterback in the building that was going to be a starter. They weren't going to be bringing back Nick Mullins, and they weren't going to be bringing back CJ Beathard. Even though that day when that end of season press conference took place, they didn't say that Mullins wasn't coming back because he was a restricted free agent. You knew that they were going to be moving on. And Shanahan kind of mentioned that. He's like, this is the first time that we've had the opportunity to make a change like this because we didn't have guys under contract and what have you and all that kind of stuff. So they said from day one that Big Garoppolo was going to be in their plans. But when you have Matthew Stafford out there who they wanted because, and who knows how far that went down, but they wanted him because Shanahan said it himself in the summer. Then you check in on it. And it was after that period, after their initial press conference, when everything kind of broke loose with Houston. And so now you've got these 2 Pro Bowl level quarterbacks who are much better than Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think they both understand that they are. So they're going to kick the tires on them, and they're going to see what they can do. And we know how it plays out. They're not able to get either one of them. I think that at that point, they were going to be going quarterback all along at 12. And so they knew they were going to be getting a rookie, and they wanted to have a guy. They wanted to get off the money from Garoppolo, and that's why I think they they talk to who they talk to. They talk to Joe Flacco, who I think could probably come on and play with the 49ers right now and give you everything that Jimmy Garoppolo gives you. They talked to Andy Dalton, who took a pretty good, a lot more money than Flacco did to go to Chicago, and I'll get back to that one in a second. And then they went after, or at least there was talks. I don't know how serious they got with their interest in Trubisky before he went to Buffalo. The Dalton one of those three is the one that's the most interesting because I think that's the one that they really wanted. Because if I remember, there was a report by one of the NFL guys that Shanahan was really upset with them not being able to get him in the building and sign him, that he went to Chicago. And I think I think that part of the reason he went to Chicago and part of the reason why Matt Nagy's looked like such an idiot, for lack of a better term, with what's going with that whole situation out there is because I think that there was probably some kind of an agreement made with, you come out here, you're going to be the guy. This is your team this year. You're going to be the guy. We want to bring him along. We saw how that worked out there for him, but they lose out on those three. At the same time, they're kicking the tires trying to find out about the guys that they could trade for. I'm really glad they didn't trade for Bridgewater or any of these guys who are going to be cheaper than Garoppolo, because if they do, they're giving up a 5th or 6th rounder. This Bridgewater was the Broncos gave up a 6th for Bridgewater. That means you don't have Elijah Mitchell on your team. That means you don't have Jalen Moore. That means you don't have Talanoa Hufanga. One of those three isn't on your team if you make that move. And I think all those guys have better futures than whatever quarterback they were going to be bringing over as a bridge. And so at that point, when all those things failed, now you're on Garoppolo. There's nowhere else to go. I mean, I know Gardner Minshew was still out there and he got traded, but Gardner Minshew was behind Flacco, so that shows you kind of where he is on the list. So I think that was the plan. And the reason, and then you go back and you look at the quote from Kyle Shanahan. It's way too long for me to say it all, but it was right after the trade, and he lays out everything in that quote. I posted it yesterday on Twitter. Everything that he said in that quote is what's taken place with the 49ers. He basically says, we want Garoppolo to be here. We're going to bring this rookie along slow. All these things. We all should have known at that point on March 29th when they had the conversation, because that's the date of that press conference, because the trade was made on the 26th, which was a Friday, and they had their press conference the next business day, which is Monday. We should have known at that point that the pick was going to be Lance. There shouldn't have been any doubt about it, because they moved up to get him. At that point, everybody was talking about Atlanta at 4 taking Lance. And they had to get ahead of them, and they either had to get the 4 pick. And obviously, at some point, somebody said that they asked for Atlanta's pick, and obviously, Atlanta's going to tell them no, because they know what they're trying to do at that point. So they telegraphed it, and they telegraphed it to all of us, and then they played the national media to make it by not either they gave the national media false information, or they just went let them run it. But I think that their plan was there. Their plan was to upgrade the starter, meaning Lance, down the road with Lance, or get a guy that's going to give you the same thing for cheaper while you have your rookie developing, or what have you. Because if they were able if they had been able to swing a trade for either of those quarterbacks, they wouldn't have had a first round pick anyway. So I mean, that's a long way for me to say. I think their plan, I understand. I think we're both kind of saying a similar thing. I feel like it's a plan. You don't feel like it's a plan.
It's semantic. I mean, it really is semantics, right? Like it kind of, I guess you could argue either way. And we are, I think we're saying the same things. I just think our conclusion is slightly different is all.
Yeah. And Raymond asked this question, and this is a good one because it really brings it into another point that I made on a tweet on Tuesday night when everything was breaking as far as this article goes. He asked, it makes it clear that the pick was Lance and they needed a bridge, but you mean to tell me that they couldn't just take a loss and cut Jimmy early on because they tried to get him a pick for him? They weren't going to. They weren't. The deal here is they weren't going to cut him. They weren't going to go into this because during free agency, remember they signed Nate Sudfeld. That was the quarterback that they did sign, and they weren't going to go off of Garoppolo with Nate Sudfeld and Josh Rosen in their quarterback room, and then think about it: Nate Sudfeld, Josh Rosen, and Trey Lance as your quarterback room to go into 2021. You compare that to Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Nate Sudfeld. I understand the arguments. Well, I'd rather have that anyway because I want Trey Lance to play because he's the future. I get that, but that quarterback room is not as good as what you have, and especially when you look at the timing of, like, say, for example, the phone call coming in, right? Because when I sent that tweet out, I was basing it off of the phone call from, but it plays out anyway. But if you base it off of the phone call coming on draft day, at that point, everybody else was gone. There wasn't anybody else for them to sign, and all the guys that they did go after, they didn't get. So I just think, if you're talking about trading them for whatever on draft night, you're not going to have any free agents to sign. And I think if you do it earlier, I mean, you have 26 million, I guess, to go and spend some money on short-term free agents, but I'm not sure why you'd want to go out and spend a bunch of money on short-term free agents when you're looking at a long-term situation with Lance. And from day one, they weren't going to do it based off of what they said.
I do think, to be fair though, like, and this is, I guess this is kind of like the nail in the coffin to me, is to it being a goal versus a plan, is twofold. One, they tried to trade for Aaron Rodgers, right? So if Lance was the plan and Garoppolo was the plan, you were willing to move off that plan very, very quickly. And then the last thing is, if somebody had come to them with a first, I would like to think that they're not too incompetent to say, hey, we'll move off of Jimmy tonight, on draft night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think quite frankly, I feel like they knew they weren't going to get a first. So if somebody was going to be crazy enough to give them a first, I think I'm putting in my head, if somebody's going to be crazy enough to give us a first, we'll go ahead and we're going to live with the consequences of this because we'll get that first. We'll go ahead and take that back. But I think they pretty much knew that nobody was going to give them a first, and that's why that was the number that kept being thrown around. There was like, I want to go for a ride on the space shuttle, knowing
it's not going to happen.
Exactly. That's kind of the way.
Maybe if they got a first, they would have taken Lance and Mac Jones and then figured it out from there.
Well, what they should have done is they should have just stayed at 12. They should have stayed at 12. They should have taken the best quarterback in the draft at 12, and then they would have all their first round draft picks, and the team would probably still have the same record, if not better, right now. And
well, they definitely wouldn't be anywhere, at least year one, right? Like I don't think there's any argument there. At least year one, they certainly wouldn't have been any worse off just starting Mac Jones from the jump. Like, that's very clear. Let's hope that Trey Lance, and I'm confident that he will make it as worth it as he possibly can. I do think he will end up being the better player than Mac, but he's going to end up having to be not just a better player. Like, if Mac is the 15th best quarterback, he's going to have to be like the 6th best quarterback, because if he's the 10th best quarterback, that gap is not big enough to make up for those missed first round picks. You know what I mean? So it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot.
I think if you judge it based off of that, like you just said, then it's a much higher hill for Trey Lance to climb to make it to win that battle, right?
For sure.
If it's just quarterback for quarterback, not counting the picks, then it's a much closer battle, because I do think that they're very different quarterbacks, but I think the results are probably going to be similar. I just think that the 49ers could have saved a ton of money, got a quarterback, had all these picks, and anyway, you guys have heard me talk about Mac Jones enough.
Yeah, but we all also agree, Jack. I mean, I think everybody that was so pissed about Mac Jones being a possibility when those rumors were swirling, pretty much everybody to a T said, well, if it was at 12, I'd be fine with Mac Jones. So it's like nobody really hated Mac. They just really hated him at 3.
Yeah. There was a lot of people that didn't like Mac Jones in January after the Senior Bowl, and the 49ers still had the 12th pick in the draft at that point. And a lot of those people are the ones that saying, well, I think Mac Jones is fine on him at 3. Now, you were really not liking Mac Jones at 12 either, based off of other things. So
for sure.
Yeah, it's funny, but stories change. Whatever. It's the way it is, and I like it. I like this conversation. It's fun. I don't want to get Waruna says, "Do the Friars have any plan at all?" Of course, the Friars have a plan at all. Let's see real quick. I got to make sure before I get too far. Let's jump into this other topic here because I think it kind of goes along with Waruna's question of the Friars having a plan. So it came out this week during yesterday's press conference. Kyle Shanahan made a comment in one of his responses to where he was looking forward to Trey Lance and taking another step after the game against Arizona because he felt like he played okay. These aren't his words. I'm totally paraphrasing here, but it sounded like he was going to be the starter against Indianapolis if Garoppolo hadn't been injured, or if he hadn't been injured. There's a lot of different ways that this goes. That Lance would have been the starting quarterback if he hadn't gotten injured against Arizona because Jimmy was still banged up and so on and so forth. You had asked to talk about this a little bit, so I'll let you start off and then I'll give my thoughts on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had thrown it out there that, hey, maybe this was what he was thinking about doing. It's just so hard because Shanahan talks in hieroglyphics and hyperboles. Like, I don't understand what he actually means half the time. But what I will say is the way that I read that situation was slightly different. I just read that as he was willing to give him more snaps, especially while Jimmy was trying to work his way back from the calf, right? Like, maybe I can use both of them. I can use Lance a lot more to relieve Jimmy. And at the same time, help Lance develop. He wasn't the starter, right? Because he was never named the starter and there was never a competition. But at the same time, he had earned enough to actually be in the conversation. Because let's remember, I mean, really outside of a couple plays in the Green Bay game, he had almost gone, 10 quarters without really even playing. So I just feel like that to me, that's the way that I took that. How did you see that situation?
Yeah, no, I felt like it meant that he was going to keep rolling forward with Lance against Indianapolis. This all sounds very familiar to Colin Kaepernick. It was going to be a situation they were going to go ahead and he wasn't going to name Lance wasn't going to be named a starter because that's Waruna pointed this out to me yesterday because I had forgot the quote was after the game against Arizona. He was asked if Lance would start moving forward or something along those lines, and he mentioned that Jimmy was still the starter, Garoppolo was still the starter, but I don't think he was going to name Lance the starter. I think he was going to go ahead and roll him into the Indianapolis game if they know. And then it's again, if they go out and he plays well against Indianapolis, or let's say he plays against Indianapolis on Sunday night and they win the game instead, guess what? Jimmy's calf, which has been bothering him, which obviously wasn't completely healed up because that's what Shanahan said in that comment, in that response yesterday. He would have just kind of let that would have been, we're just going to roll with him. And you just kind of keep rolling with him. And you just kind of keep rolling with him. And he's your starting quarterback.
Never really name him the starter, but he's just always there. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. I think that was the whole deal. And I think now where they're at, and they kind of got back into this thing where he's been hurt. The 49ers are right there in the playoff. This weekend is a big weekend for the 49ers. If they win this weekend, they can get back to within a game of a playoff. I mean, they're right there anyway, but there's going to be some teams that they're in the mix with that are going to lose this week because of they have head-to-head matchups, and either Atlanta or Carolina is going to lose a game because they're playing against each other. They're playing against Chicago, so if they can beat Chicago, so that means two of the teams ahead of them are going to lose this week if they can win, right? So
they also have a heads-up game later on with Minnesota, which will be huge.
Right. They have a heads-up game with Minnesota. They have a head-up all the teams in front of them except for Carolina, they have on their schedule still. So, I think what happens with this situation, I think what the plan is they've kind of put themselves in a situation where they're stuck with Garoppolo. And, I think they're going to run Garoppolo out this week. If they win, I think they stick with Jimmy. And if they lose, it's going to be Trey Lance come Arizona again. At least that's what I think their thought process is.
Oh, if they lose this weekend, Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would like to say there's no doubt in my mind that Trey Lance is going to be the starter going forward, but I also thought that after coming off of bye week. So who knows? I don't know anything anymore.
Well, the problem is if they lose this week, they're going to be at 2-5, and they're going to have. I mean, I think it's Chicago's going to have 4 wins, and either Atlanta or Carolina is going to have 4 wins. So I think if they lose this week, they're pretty much not out of it, but they're out of it, if that makes sense.
For sure.
So we've been talking a lot, and we haven't really gotten through our topics yet, but it's been fun.
We've been talking a lot and saying a bunch of nothing. I agree.
Well, maybe you have, but I think I've been spitting facts and I mean, I got this guy over here. Let me see if I can find him.
Jack's over here having his best show, and I'm just out here saying a bunch of garbage.
I got Anthony over here telling me that, asking me if I think Mac's going to be better than Lance, and then screaming at me that he doesn't. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've said Mac Jones is the best quarterback in the draft for months, for about a month and a half leading up to the draft. It's not going to change now. Although I do really like Trey Lance.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be clear, don't get mad because Jack
he's
very clear that Lance was like the guy right behind Mac Jones. So it's not like, that doesn't mean he doesn't like Mac or doesn't like Lance. He just liked Mac a little bit better. That's all. Yeah.
So let's jump over real quick. Let's jump into it because we were going to do a don't get defensive segment, and real quick, that was all about the defense giving up so many penalty yardage. They've given, they've given up on the defensive side. They've given up 310 yards in penalties so far through the first 6 games. That's over 50 yards a game on defense and penalties. The defense looks good when it comes to stats. They're only giving up 205 yards passing a game, but that's probably because they're giving up 42 yards in pass interference penalties every week. So and that's one of the things. Their numbers look good, but they give up chunk plays in penalties, especially on the defensive side. Offensively, they're still not very good, but that 81 yards per game penalties is really killing these guys.
That's a good strategy to rank really high on and defense. Like, hey, let's just get a bunch of penalties and then we don't have to give up a bunch of yards and we're just ranked really high. I like that strategy. It's a good one.
Right, exactly. Piter says Jack Hammer. I'm adding that to the list. I'm not sure what he's adding to the list. I'm a little
Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones and Lance.
I'm a little worried about Pinor's list because he has some crazy lists.
Dude, yeah, he does have a list on all of us, by the way.
But let's get into our predictions for tonight real quick because we're getting up against it. Game preview and prediction. Let's just jump from I guess you could probably throw your preview in there a little bit with the prediction.
Yeah. Okay. So I just think that this game is prime for the 49ers to win, right? Like no Khalil Mack. That's about as good as it gets. The Bears are injured everywhere. Luckily for the 49ers, they've already played a week without Trent Williams. They've played a couple weeks without Kittle. What's behind them is not as good as them, but it's not bad. And it looks like Debo's now going to play. So that's a good thing. Guys like Hasty now have an extra week under their belt. I just feel like the Niners should win this one. The Bears really don't look good. The Twitter darling of the draft, Justin Fields, looks like hot garbage. And, the Bears, like the 49ers, really can't put up a lot of points. So it's not like you're going to have to win a shootout. Although you say that, and it'll probably be like 42-40 because I said it. But you're probably not going to have to score 30 this game, like you have been having to score in the past. And so I think the 49ers win this. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I'm going to go 20-17 San Francisco.
20-17 San Francisco. Okay. Well, I'm going to come at you. And the only problem that I have with this is that I'm a little nervous about where I'm going because Bruno's 6-0 this year, and he says that he's leaning towards Chicago to win.
I know. He said the same thing on my show, and I was like, oh, God.
I think he's going to be wrong this week, and part of it is because Khalil Mack's not going to be there. And quite frankly, I think the 49ers have been – the 49ers, if you look at their numbers, they're going to score 23 points this week. The 49ers are going to win this game 23-15. No Khalil Mack. the Bears are usually pretty decent at home, but I just feel like the 49ers are the better team this week. When you look at on paper, they're the better team. If they don't go out and give up 80 yards and penalties this week, I think 81 yards and penalties this week, I think that they have this one. This is a rookie quarterback who's struggled. I know everybody likes it and gets all crazy when he makes a throw here and there, but those are far and few between with what his numbers really, what he's really doing on the season. I think he's only completed 57% of his passes this year. That's okay. And he's thrown 3 interceptions to every touchdown, or right. Two touchdowns. For every 1 touchdown, it's I don't know. My math stinks right now, so I'm going to say 2 touchdowns. He has a lot of fumbles. And 6 interceptions. He's got 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
3-1.
He's got he's got 6 fumbles, and he is the guy that I scouted when I was looking at him at Ohio State. I mean, this is the stuff that he did there. He just doesn't have a great team around him like he did at Ohio State. He was the Jimmy Garoppolo of the draft.
Oh, so, I like it.
I will say that the final score will be 49ers 23, Bears 15.
You know what? That takes some guts. 15 points. Because, I mean, there's ways to arrive at it, right? You could 5 field goals, I guess, but you would do a 2-point conversion, or a safety would need to be in there if you do score a touchdown. I like that. I like the 15. That's some guts on that one.
Yeah. So did some quick math while you were talking to come up with the numbers. So 23-15, I think the 49ers are going to pull this one out. They're going to get everybody upset because that means it's going to be a little bit longer before we get to see Trey Lance. And I want to see Trey Lance too. I just want this quarterback thing to be done with. I want to stop talking about Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. I just want to be talking about one quarterback. And then
not Jimmy Garoppolo.
Well, I don't mind talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is playing like Jimmy Garoppolo this year. That's another whole other topic that we can get into is, I know we just gave our predictions. We're trying to wrap up the show, but if we were going to go have another topic, would be: has Jimmy Garoppolo truly regressed, or has the team around him regressed? Because I don't think that Jimmy Garoppolo's regressed. I think Jimmy Garoppolo's playing like Jimmy Garoppolo's always played. The only difference is that he doesn't have the running game backing up, and the defense, as good as the defense plays, they're a little hit and miss too with stuff. It seems like when the defense has to make a stop, they can't make a stop, if that makes sense. And when it's kind of early on and they're kind of playing with house money in a way, they play well. It's odd. This is kind of my feeling. There's no numbers or anything to back it up. It's just kind of the feel I get with the way that the flow of the game goes. So
I'm 100% in agreement with you. He has not regressed. He's the same player that I've always seen, 2019 included. Yeah.
And you look at him, he's throwing for 220 something yards a game this year. He only threw for 182 last year. If you I know he missed a game of his 6 starts. In his 6 starts, he threw for 221. But he's also of that time he missed half against one team, and he missed a quarter against another. So he really played 5 and a quarter games, and that's still only 190 yards last year per game. So he's getting more yards. Deebo Samuel is doing well, but there's nothing going to Brandon Ayuk, and no George Kittle, no Raheem Mostert. They didn't have Mostert last year either. So
let me ask you something before you read Waruna's thing, and then we wrap up here. Deebo Samuel, this is a topic Grant and I got on to last night. Do you think they should pay Deebo to keep him? Like, let's assume that he's going to want to get paid some good money, right? Because he's having a good season. Do you think that they should break the bank for Deebo?
Can he start catching the ball? I mean, I like him, but I mean, how many times do we? I mean, he makes a lot of plays, but Sunday night you have the drop. At least instead of having either a first down or a second and short, you have a drop. Now you're in 3rd and 8. The next play should have been a completion, but still the drop. The next time they throw the ball to him was a catch and he fumbles. The next time that, later on in the game in the 4th quarter, they throw the ball to him, it bounces off his chest. I understand it was a little bit more inside than it should have been. You got to catch the ball. That's I don't know. I really like him. He's one of the most dynamic players on the 49ers, and I want to see the ball in his hands. I'm just not sure if I give him the big money at this point because he's not showing the consistency that it takes at that position to be that guy. He's, quite frankly, it seems to me like he's doing all the stuff to put him in the doghouse instead of Brandon Ayuk in a lot of ways. I understand his numbers are great. I'm not trying to knock that, but when you're dropping 10% of the balls thrown your way and you're fumbling balls twice, I mean, that fumble on Sunday night cost the 49ers the lead. That fumble is the reason they were trailing at halftime. It's the reason why they were down, throughout the whole second half.
Yeah, listen, I'm literally looking at a Deebo Samuel signed picture right there in my room, right? This is my favorite 49er, current favorite 49er. I don't think you should pay Deebo. I think he's in a command too much. And, you couple everything Jack just said with the soft tissue injuries that have continued to be there. And I just think that you shouldn't break the bank for him.
Yeah, no, I not at this point. We'll see what happens. They're still, maybe they have. I don't. I understand they have another year on his contract, so they don't have to make a decision this year. They can push it off to the end of next year. So hopefully that's what they do, because I would like to see, or maybe he just picks it up and he starts catching everything that comes his way for the rest of this year. I mean, it would be great to see. I would like to see him catch the ball like Brandon Ayuk has a couple of times.
Yeah, it's interesting. He does the Vernon Davis thing sometimes where he tries to cup it instead of getting his hands around. There was the slant, I think, against Arizona that I remember him dropping, and he was trying to catch it like this. It's like, dude, get your hands turned around and lock it in. So,
yeah, no, definitely. There's just, again, he's a really good player. He's probably the most dynamic player on the 49ers offense, but his issues kind of mirror the 49ers, right? The 49ers get a lot of yards on offense this year. They actually do move the ball well, but they don't score. And, they turn the ball over. They go into these stretches where they can't get first downs. And so I think he's part of it. So that's it. Yeah. I love Deebo Samuel though. So don't come at me with pitchforks and your and everything else. Cause I really do like watching the ball in his hands. It's just a matter of, I want to see him do better, and I think if anybody's in the doghouse, it kind of should be him. Really,
you just want the ball to stay in his hands. Is that all you're asking for? I don't think that's too much to ask for from a receiver.
catch the ball and don't fumble. So one of the cool things, though, real quick before we do stop, is I did get to see Deebo Samuel meet Jerry Rice on Sunday. He had said previously that he hadn't met him, so he definitely did get to meet him on Sunday before the game. Jerry Rice was in the seats right there behind the end zone on one of the ends, and Deebo Samuel came over and said hi to him before the game. So that was kind of cool to see.
That's cool.
Yep. So that's the show for tonight, everybody. 49ers
going to run a super chat.
Oh yeah. Runa? No, I let him just pay the money. No, of course.
We all saw it.
No. Well, Runa says, and Runa, thank you I love Runa. I wish that I had done my Niner chatter this week just to talk to Runa. And there's some other ones on here that I like to talk to. But Runa's always been a great dude for myself and you as well, just as far as, checking us out and helping
for
us.
Sure.
I want to be done with the quarterback talk too and start about who should be our next head coach. That's not very nice. That's not, I think. One of the things that I've noticed about Waruna is he's gotten much edgier in the last month or two. You can tell that he's really feeling himself with how how good his writing is on the 49ers site and
his record being undefeated at 49ers picks.
That's maybe we should stop talking about cocky Kyle and start talking about cocky Waruna, right? I mean,
this is Waruna's head.
I mean, how many times do we have to hear that he has a perfect record so far this year, that he's 6-0? How many? It's not like I walk around telling everybody that Mac Jones is the best quarterback, so far. Yeah. I mean, I did tweet it out the other day, but when it just bounces right in front of you.
Yeah. And whenever I get the chance, like it's right there on a silver platter. I never tell people that I was right about the 49ers picking Trey Lance. Like I would never do that.
But thank you very much, Runa, for that. And yes, that we're going to be talking about that probably. Hopefully we're not. Hopefully, really for the 49ers case, and if you're a 49ers fan, hopefully that's not a topic of discussion 12 months from now, because the things will have turned around and better days will be ahead. So we'll see. But thanks, Jesse, for coming on. Do you have any other shows that you want to plug real quick?
Yeah, I mean, just the channel in general. Last Second Sports. A lot of you probably were subscribed at some point. If you didn't know, the channel obviously went under, and I had to start a new one. So yeah, if you haven't done so yet, run on over to Last Second Sports, subscribe, and look out for some good sports talk over there as well.
Yeah, perfect. Definitely go over there, check out Jesse and his crew over there. They put out a bunch of different stuff, because you guys do stuff other than football too, right?
Yeah, we do a little bit of everything. We definitely, I mean, football is probably most in our wheelhouse, but it's not just 49ers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so please go over there and check his channel out. Over as far as mine goes, please, if you're not already subscribed, subscribe. Like everybody says, hit that like button. Comment in there. I want to say thank you to Gil for the donation. Thank you very much. And then
they don't want to let us go, Jack.
I know, that's okay. Raymond comes on and says, great show, fellas. How crazy would it be if the Flyers lose to the 49ers and become sellers at the deadline? And how shocking would it be if it's Debo? I think he said if the Flyers lose to the Bears and become sellers at the deadline, how shocking would it be if it's Debo? That would be definitely something that's shocking for sure, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, and no, you give me I'm a professional over here. You give me a super chat, I'm not going to miss it. Here, see the difference though between Grant and myself is that I get like a couple, 3, 4, maybe 5. Whereas when you're on with Grant, it's there's quite a bit more. So I can understand why he misses those.
Dude, I don't like when you're on these shows, you can go over and look at the comments, right? So I try to keep up on them. If I'm on anybody's show, I keep up with the comments. If I'm on Grant's, I don't even look at them. I just keep it on the private chat. So I'm not even trying to keep up with what's going on in there. It's too much.
Yeah. No, so I've got 23-15 49ers over the Bears. Jesse is at
20-17 Niners.
20-17. So hopefully it's going to be a good weekend for everybody with the 49ers on Sunday. Also, get ready to take your kiddos out to do some trick-or-treating if you have them, and then you can have their candy after. That's the dad tip there. Have a great night, everybody, and be sure to check out the channels, and we'll be back with you soon with more content. Have a great day. Great night.